actual displacement. It is measured by seismometer. Center of rigidity. It is the point through which the resultant of the resistance to the applied lateral force acts. Center of mass. It is the point through which the applied seismic force acts. Column. Structural member has a ratio of its unsupported height to its least lateral dimension of not less than 3 and is used primarily support axial load. Corbel. A short edge beam projecting from a column to support a weight. Creep. This structure is subjected to a load for a long period of time. It will continue to deform until a sudden fracture occurs. Ductility. It refers to the ability of a material to deform in the plastic range without breaking. Elasticity. It refers to the property of a material which makes it return to its original dimension when the load is removed. Eccentricity. It is the distance between the center of rigidity and center of mass. Fatigue. When a material is subjected to repeated cycles of stress or strain, ultimately leading to fracture. Focal depth. Besides the epicenter, it describes the location of the earthquake. Homogeneous. The material has the same composition at every point, but the elastic may not be the same in all directions. Hooke's law. Stress is proportional to the strain within elastic region. Isotropic. The material has the same elastic properties in all directions. Kinetic friction. Retarding force acting opposite in motion. Magnitude of earthquake. It is measured by the Richter scale. Orthotropic. The composition material exhibits elastic properties in one direction different from that in the perpendicular direction. Poisson's ratio. The deformation of axially loaded members, the ratio of the lateral to the longitudinal strain is constant. Post-tensioning. Stressing high-strength steel after the concrete has been cast and has attained sufficient strength. Pre-tensioning. Stressing high-strength steel wires before concrete hardens. Plasticity. A condition that when there is already a permanent deformation, it continues to deform when a minimal load is applied beyond the elastic. Reciprocal of deflection. It refers to the rigidity of a structure. Reciprocal of stiffness. It refers to flexibility of structure. Relaxation. Loss of stress that takes place with the passage of time as concrete is held at a constant strain. Resilience. It refers to the ability of a material to absorb energy in the elastic range. Resonance. Refers to the large amplitude vibration of an object or system when given impulses at its natural frequency. Soft story. in one which the lateral stiffness is less than 70% of the stiffness of the story above. Resultant determines whether the body will be in equilibrium or will have a varying state of motion. Static. It refers to the force generated by a given body at rest. Story drift. It is the displacement of one level relative to the level above or below. Torsional shear stress occurs when the center of mass and rigidity do not coincide. Yielding. The material deforms considerably even with a slight increase in stress. Toughness. It refers to the ability of a material to absorb energy in the plastic range. Young's modulus. It is a constant of proportionality that defines the linear relationship between stress and strain. Friction. A contact resistance by one body when the second body moves or tends to move past the first body. Strain energy. Energy stored in a material due to its deformation. Modulus of toughness. It indicates the maximum amount of strain energy the material can absorb just before it fractures. Modulus of resilience. Represents the largest amount of strain energy per unit volume the material can absorb without causing any permanent damage in the material. Stiffness. Ability to resist a deformation within a linear range. Flexibility. Inverse of stiffness. Toughness. Material's resistance to fracture. Hardness. Material's resistance to indentation. Ductile materials. Any material that can be subjected to large strains before it fractures. Brittle materials. Materials that exhibit little or no yielding before failure. Prismatic. All cross-sections are the same throughout its length. Buckling. Lateral deflection that occurs when long slender members are subjected to an axial compressive force. Strain hardening. When yielding has ended, an increase in load can be supported by the specimen until it reaches a maximum stress referred to as the ultimate stress. Necking. Just after the ultimate stress, the cross-sectional area will begin to decrease in a localized region of the specimen until specimen breaks at the fracture stress. Aggregate. Used in concrete may be fine aggregates and coarse. Fine aggregates. Those that pass through number 4 sieve. Water. Used in mixing concrete shall be clean dram injurious amount of oils, acids, alkalis, salts, organic materials, or other substance that may be deleterious to concrete of reinforcement. Center of gravity. Is the point where the object suffers no torque by the effective gravitational force acting upon it. Damping. The additional of energy-absorbing components into a structural building frame to reduce lateral deflection and lessen the stresses imparted into the frame when subjected to high wind and seismic forces. Center of stiffness. The point through which the resultant of the restoring forces of a system acts. Epicenter. The geographical force on the surface of Earth vertically above the focus of the earthquake. Focus. The originating earthquake source of the elastic waves inside the Earth which cause shaking of ground due to earthquake. Design seismic base shear. It is the total design lateral force at the base of the structure. Proportional limit. It is a term for the value beyond which the stress is no longer proportional to the strain. Elastic limit. The greatest stress a material is capable of developing without a permanent elongation remaining upon complete unloading of the specimen. Resonance. It occurs when a building period coincides with a natural period. Time period of the undamped free vibration of the structure. Intensity. A measure of the strength of shaking during the earthquake. Magnitude. A measure of energy released in an earthquake. Seismographs are instruments used to record the motion of the ground during an earthquake. Modulus of elasticity. Slope of the straight line portion of the curve or the ratio of stress over the strain. Weak story. It is one which story lateral strength is less than 80% of that in the story above. Story. It is the space between two adjacent floors. Story displacement. It is the lateral displacement of a story relative to the base. Diaprams. Rigid horizontal planes used to transfer lateral forces to. Shear wall. Wall designed to resist lateral forces acting in its own plane, typically wind and seismic loads. Stiffened walls are capable of transferring lateral forces from floors and roofs to the foundation. Ultimate stress. The maximum stress a material is capable of developing. Rupture strength. The stress at which the specimen actually breaks. Water-cement ratio. It significantly influences the quality and strength of concrete. Failure. The condition that renders a load-resisting member unfit for resisting further increasing in loads. Diagonal tension. The tensile stress that develops on the diagonal surface. Brittleness. Implies the absence of any plastic deformation prior to failure. Malleability. the property of a material enabling it to undergo considerable plastic deformation under compressive load. Dilatation. Change of volume per unit volume. Ductile material is one having a relatively large tensile strain up to the point of rupture. Brittle material is one having a relatively small tensile strain up to the point of rupture. Tangent modulus. The rate of change of stress with respect to strain. Specific strength. The ratio of the ultimate of the tensile strength to specific weight, that is the weight per unit volume. Specific modulus. Ratio of the Young's modulus to the specific weight. Dynamic. Forces generated by a body in motion. Anisotropic. Materials whose properties depend upon the direction considered. Corrosion. Failure of a material due to repeated stress. Camber. A built-in upward curvature of a beam or girder to compensate for its deflection or sag. Plastic hinge. A deformation of a part of a beam whenever plastic bending happens. Collapse mechanism. By inserting a plastic hinge at a plastic limit load into a statically determinate beam, a kinematic mechanism permitting an unbounded displacement system can be found. Concrete pedestal is a compression element provided to carry the loads from supported elements like columns, statues, etc. to footing below the ground. Web local yielding assumes that the entire applied force reaction passes through a critical area of web located at the top of a fillet that connects the flange to the web. Web local crippling. It is actually a local buckling that occurs when a web is slender. Plastic analysis. It is the analysis in which the criterion for design of structures is the ultimate load. Actual displacement. It is measured by seismometer. Center of rigidity. It is the point through which the resultant of the resistance to the applied lateral force acts. Center of mass. It is the point through which the applied seismic force acts. Column. Structural member has a